Hi guys. So it was a very emotional weekend for Arsenal Football Club. On Saturday, they lost the Champions League very sadly to PSG, who have now won it 2 times in a row. And then on Sunday, yesterday, Arsenal Football Club held what would probably go down in history as like one of the highest trophy parades, in the Premier League. Of course, they officially paraded their trophy before the fans yesterday. You know how it's done. They usually would get on an open van and then they celebrate. They go around the city, with songs, with sounds, to show the Premier League the trophy that they have won. So that was what happened yesterday, for Arsenal, and that was sadly after they lost the Champions League to PSG on Saturday. And I think that the way Arsenal celebrated their trophy yesterday was something that was carefully done to sort of, shut the mouths of, detractors, the mouth of fans of other clubs who have really been criticizing them, after they lost the Champions League on Saturday. It was carefully planned, to sort of say, okay, forget the fact that we lost. We expected that we're going to win. But since that didn't happen, it wouldn't stop us from celebrating this one that we have. And the fact is that regardless of how you see it, Arsenal has had a very successful season, all right? I know I'm one person who really hoped that they would win the Champions League, given that it was supposed to be their very first, win, in the entire history of the club. And you could really tell from the expressions on the faces of the players, after they lost that Champions League final on Saturday, on penalties. And going back to what really happened that Saturday, like I said, I was one person who really hoped that Arsenal was going to win that trophy. And sadly, it ended the way it did. PSG won it again. PSG is really a strong side. And to be honest and to be fair, PSG were the better side in that encounter. PSG clearly showed Arsenal class. They showed Arsenal why they were a better side. They had complete possession of the ball, pass accuracies. But of course, Arsenal really made good use of the opportunity that they got, courtesy of that very sharp goal. It was in the 6th minute of the game from Kai Havertz. And I think scoring that goal, Kai Havertz actually shut the mouth of those who were criticizing Arteta's, decision to actually play him from the start of the game, because when the lineup came out and then it was noticed that Havertz was on the lineup instead of their main striker. People started to complain. People started to question the reason why, as Arteta would, drop the main striker of the team and then decide to play Havertz. But when he got on the game and then he scored that goal, everybody was like, okay, it was a very thoughtful decision, to have played, Havertz, given his Champions League experience. That's not the first time he's doing it, and we've seen him do it, all right? And generally, Arteta didn't really, I don't think he really made any decision that was not good enough. If you ask me, this is my very personal opinion. All of those he brought in, to start the game were perfect choices, from the defender, the goalkeeper. Of course, nobody was going to take the place of David Raya, in the goalkeeper. And then you had, the very strong central defense that, has continued to sort of hold the back line of the team. And then you had the midfield, then you had, the forwards. Ebere Eze didn't begin the game, of course. It was Bukayo Saka, who didn't quite have a wonderful game. And then, of course, he had to be substituted at some point. All right. So on the whole, I feel like Mikel Arteta made the best choices. All right. It's just that, we didn't know it was going to end in a penalty, because if he knew it was going to end in a penalty, Bukayo Saka is one of the best penalty takers in Arsenal. I think he probably wouldn't have removed him, and then, brought in another player. But, he ended the way he did. And like I said, PSG clearly showed class. At some point, I was beginning to really feel for Arsenal players because they had to do a lot of defending. I mean, Gabriel was, oh God, that guy deserves every accolade. All right. I mean, they had to do a lot of defending because PSG kept on pressing. And if you noticed in that game, PSG had better control of Arsenal in the midfield. You know, Lewis Kelly, naturally not a midfielder. I mean, we know him as a defender, but, you know, because of a couple of performances he has pulled in the midfield, you know, Arteta had to sort of start him from that position. But at some point he was overwhelmed, and I remember I even made a social post on X and said that I feel like Arteta needs to remove this guy because he's overwhelmed already. And you notice that at some point he started committing fouls. I mean, that shows you that the guy was clearly, you know, tired and needed to be changed. All right. But on the whole, like I said, it was, you know, perfect decision. But I mean, it's football, and one thing is certain: sometimes those you expect to win do not end up winning. And of course, we know how he ended in a penalty. You know, 4-3. The game ended 1-1 full time, and then, you know, it had to be decided, you know, on penalties. So I honestly wanted them to win because, I mean, PSG just won it last season, so it would have really made more sense if Arsenal had won that trophy. Forget all of the banters you're seeing on social media. You know, fans of Chelsea, even Manchester United and other clubs have been really criticizing Arsenal. And I mean, I even saw this post of where Chelsea were asking Arsenal, you know, to come for a trophy visit or to come and see, you know, their trophy showroom and see the Champions League. You know, all of this wouldn't have been happening if Arsenal had won that Champions League. I mean, of course, you know, they would have made history, you know, being the first team to win it for the club, and it would have really made a lot of sense, like I said. So the penalty was another emotional moment. I mean, you know, Eze, I was really disappointed because I thought Eze was like a good penalty team taker. So we saw how he threw his own away, and then the last person, Gabriel, saw how he shot. Oh God, when that guy took possession of the ball and he was going to play, my heart was beating. You know, I've not watched him play a penalty before, so I wouldn't really tell if he's a good penalty taker. But I mean, I felt he wasn't going to score that game. I mean, and I don't know, oftentimes when defenders want to play penalty, there's a kind of force that they attach to, you know, the kick, and that was what happened. You saw how he shot it really high or more, and then he put his hand on his head. We saw how, I think it was Marquinhos, his fellow Brazilian player, that went and held him, you know, to sort of say, okay, oh, sorry, you understand, we know it really hurts, but I mean, it's football. All right. So I know that Arsenal would come back better next season. You know, of course, at least they now have a feeling of what it means to, you know, get to the final of a major European competition like the Champions League. So I know by next season they will come better prepared. It's just that I was really worried because, you know, it's usually not easy to get to this point. All right. I mean, I know how really hard they worked to be able to get to the final, and they're not winning it. You know, you can't really say what would happen next season because with every passing season, clubs, you know, are improving on their game. Clubs are buying new players, you know, to see how they can progress and to win Champions League and, you know, other trophies, you know, the Premier League and the rest of them. So it's really going to be difficult, and that was why I, you know, really hoped that Arsenal was going to win, so that at least, you know, they would enter the history books as having won, you know, the Champions League. But I mean, it has happened the way it has happened. So yesterday was the trophy celebration, you know, and like I said, it was as though they carefully planned it. I mean, they were everywhere. It was everywhere in the news, you know, about how they celebrated their trophy. You know, after all, they didn't have a bad season. Of course, they got to the Champions League final, and then, you know, they won the Premier League. So congratulations to them. I mean, I wish them well, and I wish that, you know, next season, you know, they would come back stronger. So share your thoughts on the comment section. Were you really happy, very honestly, that PSG won, you know, the Champions League for the second time in a row, now making it look like other clubs across Europe are not serious? Or were you part of those who hoped that Arsenal was going to win, to at least, get into history books as having won, the Champions League? And what were your thoughts about the trophy parade yesterday? What were your thoughts about the lineup, on Saturday? Do you think there was an issue? All right, because like I said, PSG had complete control of the game. They dominated almost on every side. I mean, one thing you can't take away from PSG is the fact that they are very strong in the midfield position and then even the flanks. But on Saturday, we saw that they dominated mostly, from the midfield. Just share your thoughts in the comment section. Thank you very much for watching. Bye for now.